Welcome, dear students. The current session is on cross-linguistic influence and the spread of English. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would be able to understand the impact of cross-linguistic influences on the spread of English language in the world. Well, my dear students, the crucial factor in the development of English over the last few centuries is its role in the world. You know, with the passage of time through the last couple of centuries, its role in the world has completely changed. English has been brought into contact with new environments, with new settings, with new cultures, with new peoples all across the globe. You know, if we go a couple of centuries back, English was, spoken, of course, in the world, but, mainly it was related to certain people. For instance, British English that was spoken in the Great Britain, or, later on when in the recent centuries we see its development in the American context. But, through the last 1.5 century or couple of centuries, we can see it growing and connecting to the rest of the world as well. The natural result of all this is the rise of divergent varieties of English across the globe. Well, my dear students, if you look at the slide that right now is in front of you, actually here we can see how, very rapidly, this is what you need to focus on, how very rapidly the population of the world is growing. This is the annual growth rate in population that is from, 1998 to 2003, and I have taken it from Encyclopedia Britannica 2004. So you can already notice from 2004 till today, already there must have been a lot of, rapid increase in that. But if you notice here, the countries, in every country, the population rate is, shown here, how the number of people, the population is increasing. 1.2% to, 2.1% here from, Australia to Philippines, it is given. And if we look at the average, population increase in the world, actually it is 2.32 through these years, which shows a very speedy growth in the population rate. What does it mean? It means the speakers of English are also growing in numbers. The English language of today, it reflects, how the world is growing and how the people of today, they are using English language. But, this list of countries that I have shown is just a part of the list of all those countries where English is used. More than 100 countries, by the way, in the world are currently using English as a foreign language for their people to connect with the rest of the world. But, this variety or this diversified contact that English has today, it is not something that is new to English. If we trace the history back, we would find it is actually a part of the development of centuries, behind. In the history, English has always been contacted with various languages. It had always been, surrounded by various cultures and various kinds of people throughout the history. In fact, my dear students, the political and social events that have in the course of English history so profoundly affect the, English language, we can notice and we can recognize them if we trace the history back. Taking you back, in the times when Roman Christianizing happened in 597, this brought English in contact with what I would point out here as Latin civilization. Latin civilization had a lot of impact, a lot of Greek and Latin impact came to the English language during these times. In fact, there were a lot of additions, particularly in terms of vocabulary. Then the Scandinavian invasions resulted in a considerable mixture of the two peoples and their languages. It's very natural when, two different kinds of peoples with two different kinds of cultures and two different kinds of languages, when they come closer, when they live together, this results in, bringing an impact on their languages as well. Another important point in the history of English language in terms of its contact with other languages and in terms of this cross-linguistic influence that we are talking about is the Norman conquest that made English for 2 centuries the language mainly of the lower classes, because, you know, the upper class people would use French language. The French Norman influence brought English to a point where it would just be used by the very low class people. And all the aristocracy, of course, used French at that time. However, English once more regained supremacy as language of all elements of the population, during 1066. In the same way, 100 Years' War is another event in the history that had a strong impact on English language, because, this was the time when after that, Norman influence, where language was brought down to the level of the language of very poor people or illiterate people, English got a chance to rise to the status of a language of privilege, or a language of the upper class, because, these were the times when, for the first time, we would see that the lower class or the middle class, they were emerging. Later on through the times, the expansion of the British Empire and the growth of commerce and industry, the development of science and technology, and of course the development of literature, all of them had a very strong influence on the development of English language, and each one of these contributed towards, the development of English language by bringing those cross-linguistic influences from different parts of the world, from different cultures of the world. So, overall, what we can say is that when we trace the history of English language, it is a history of quite divergent societies with divergent languages, which caused the English language to change and to be enriched through its contact that happened through these, cross-linguistic, connections with other languages to fulfill all the needs that this language had in various contexts. It borrowed words from other languages, and thus all the cross-linguistic linguistic influences played their role in enriching this language. The result of all these, linguistic connectivities with other languages and their influences, and the use of English by different kinds of people in different areas of the world, the result of all this is that today we have British English, we have American English, we have African English, we have South Asian English, we have Australian English, and apart from that, we have many other varieties of English, which include, for instance, New Zealand English as another variety. All these varieties have contributed towards, the enrichment of what in totality we call the English language today.